All right, man. Well, we're gonna dive right in then.
Yes,
Cool.
ready.
Well, I think a natural place to start then is kind of going back to the beginning. And in the beginning, in 2008, you and Ray Kurzweil started Singularity with the idea that the world needed a place for future leaders to go learn about exponential technology and how to apply these technologies for the betterment of society. And since then, a lot has changed. We've seen social media come to rise and rule the world, bringing with it mental health and political issues. We've seen self-driving cars and commercial space travel become a thing that's normal. Trust in science has potentially faltered due to things like COVID. And to top it all off, we're now entering what appears to be a major exponential leap in AI. Given all that has transpired since that vision in 2008, what has changed around your original thesis, and what role do you see Singularity continuing to play in that future?
So first off, exciting times.
Yeah.
Uh, and, I like to say the most amazing time ever to be alive. The only time more amazing than today is perhaps tomorrow. The basic thesis for creating Singularity was that there was no place on the planet you could go to actually get a immersive understanding of these exponential technologies and the convergence of them, and that these were the most powerful technologies in the world that were going to be changing every aspect of our lives, how we raise our kids, how we run our companies, how we run our nations, everything. And I still think that thesis is correct, that the faster things are going, the more challenging it is for people to keep up with them. And even more than keep up with them, figure out what they should be focusing on, what they should be learning about, and how they and the implications to themselves as executives, as entrepreneurs. And that is still true, and more so than ever before, right? Since the founding of Singularity now 14 odd years ago, uh, uh, the world has changed many times over. A lot of the predictions that Ray has made, a lot of the technologies that I have been focusing on have come, uh, they've blossomed, and they're ruling the roost, so to speak. I ended up creating Abundance 360 as Singularity University's highest level year-round program, because just going to a one and done executive program was not enough. You needed to keep this alive in your life. So it was interesting. I made a commitment to run Abundance 360 for 25 years,
Mm.
so that the community would be in this not just for a visit to get like a little bit of knowledge, but would be year on year on year, 25 years, sort of like a countdown to the singularity, for lack of a better term. And people need that. They need some touchstone to say, okay, this is what happened in the last year, and this is what's happening the next 3 to 5 years, and sort of
Mm.
a runway. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, and along the way, you've put forth a lot of pretty profound ideas. We have a nice list of Peter's laws that keep us grounded in this journey, but you've also put forth the 6Ds, which is incredibly popular with the community. But does the recent explosion in AI and increased computing power over these years change your framework at all or change your laws? Do you see maybe a new D needing to be added to your 6Ds?
One thing I talked about in, I think it was my second book, Bold, um, was the idea of a user interface moment.
Mm.
And I think that goes along with the 6Ds. And the 6Ds, for those who uh, either need a refresher or didn't quite get them, was that whatever you digitize, and we proverbially, I talk about digitizing the Kodak camera, that when you digitize something in the early days of its exponential growth, it's very deceptive. A 0.01 megapixel camera grows to 0.02 to 0.04 to 0.08. It all looks like zero. But 30 doublings later, it's a billionfold better. And in that case, the digital camera has destroyed film photography. Um, and the next D is that you are dematerializing things. The camera goes away. It's now buried in your cell phone as a app and as a part of the tech. And then when you dematerialize, you are demonetizing and democratizing. The cost of something goes to near zero. The cost of transmitting it is near zero. And it democratizes. It's available everywhere at minimal cost. The other related area is the idea of a user interface moment. And the example I talk about there is that when the Mosaic browser was created by Mark Andreessen, the internet was around as part of ARPANET, and it was available at the top universities and used by researchers, but the public didn't have it. But then Mosaic came along, and then Internet Explorer and all the other variations of it, that was a user interface that allowed me, the general public, to use Mosaic and then interface with this thing called the internet. And that was amazing. And we have had many user interface moments. But what's happening right now with AI is AI will become the ultimate user interface moment. And what do I mean by that? It means we're all going to have a version of Jarvis. And Jarvis is, from Iron Man, that thing that Tony Stark spoke to, and then through Jarvis could do anything. So if I don't know how to 3D print something, but I have in my mind what I want, I can describe it to my AI, my version of Jarvis, and I can say, I'd really like a device that I can put a hot liquid into, that's thermally isolated, that has a cap on it. And, in my VR or AR headset, it's my AI is creating this device that's floating in front of me. And I say, yes, that's great. I'd like a cap on it with a sliding hole so I can sip on it. And it's shaping it from my mind to materialization. And then I go, yeah, that's it. And it says, okay, well, I can make it out of these materials. Here's the property and the cost. Which one would you like? And I pick the options I want, and I say, print, please. So I've known nothing about 3D printing or design, but I know what I want and I can see it. And my AI becomes the interface to that. And that's going to be true even everything down to genetic engineering. So AI becomes the ultimate user interface moment. So what that means is we're about to see a massive unlocking of human creative potential, because it used to be just those few who were properly skilled and trained in genetic engineering or in 3D printing or in game design. But now I can be creative and describe what I want and have it coming into existence. And so, to put it in colloquial terms, we ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah. I can see a describe, dialogue and describe. Maybe we got a lot of D options there. Well, and sticking with that, that makes me think. I know something I've heard you say often is you're a big fan of the phrase dangerous ideas. Is there an idea that you feel is particularly dangerous right now?
And I use the word dangerous ideas more as a way of getting people's attention to this. And I think that not necessarily, I don't want to make it a dystopian idea, but the dangerous idea is around the rate of change, that we're going to enter a period which is shocking to the world, of, how many people are reinventing things and, wealth creation out of seemingly no place, and reinvention of the things that my family has been doing for 5 generations out of seemingly no place, and the rise of the creative empowered by these technologies. A dangerous idea that it may not matter where you went to school, and university may become a thing of the past, where I'm learning what I need to know in the moment I need to know it. And what I really is important is my personal creative genius that didn't come from studying. It came from just the way I was born, the way I like to see the world. So these are dangerous in that they are upsetting what has been cultural, societal norms. And people are going to rebel to that because the reality is people like the world to be the way it's been for as long as they have been alive. They don't like change. They like knowing what the game board is
Yeah.
and where their pieces are and where they made their bets. And if someone comes along and like shakes the game board, like my kids were young, we'd play the game of Risk, which had all these pieces on the board of sort of, and if someone like came and shook it up, it was like, oh my God, where'd my pieces go? What's going on? I don't know how to deal with this anymore. It's like all of the boundary conditions and the rules that we're playing by were gone. Well, that's a dangerous idea, which is coming.
Do you think it's coming, or do you think we've already arrived there? Because if we're going
Oh,
to
it's
address
coming.
the,
It's
yeah,
coming. No, it's
well,
we've seen 1% maybe
okay.
of what's coming,
Well,
right?
let's
Like,
address the elephant in the room then. I mean,
yeah,
with AIs, large language models, GPT, where do you think we are in terms of that paradigm shift?
just at the beginning. I
Yeah.
mean, what we're seeing is auto GPT or equivalents thereof, right? So it's AI enabling you to use AI more efficiently. And it is, we will eventually reach what people will call artificial general intelligence, right? Ray's prediction has been 2029 when AI exceeds human intelligence. Elon's prediction has been, circa 2025. It's somewhere in that period of time, which by the way is like tomorrow.
Yes.
It's like tomorrow, just to be clear about this. And
Do you agree with
so
those dates?
I agree that things are going to get, yeah, I do. And the world has not. It was Ray was always the outsider. Everybody was predicting, maybe if it is going to happen, it's going to be 50 or 100 years from now. Oh
Hmm.
my God, 50 to 100 years is inconceivable,
Hmm.
right? I'm unable to see a decade from now, at best. I was with Imad Mustak, the founder of Stability AI, on my stage at Abundance 360. And one of the A360 members, I think, was also a Singularity University executive graduate, asked the question, like, how far out can you see what's coming? And he's like, 1 to 2 years, maybe at the most, right? And so the definition of the singularity, and I'm not defining a singularity, but singularity is a point at which you can't see anything beyond what is here, right? The ability to predict, the time frame for prediction is getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. So, and all the things it impacts.
Well,
Um, yeah.
and a big part of that, as you said, the board is being shaken, and people are having trouble seeing the future. And as AI and GPT and everything starts to really come online, people are incredibly afraid of what's happening to their place in the world. What skills do you think people should really be training or focusing on cultivating within themselves, whether they're a leader or an employee, and regardless of industry, really, what's going to help them prepare and navigate this transformation?
So it's constant education. It's
Mm,
constantly learning. It is the mindsets that I teach as part of the singularity abundance world. Having a abundance mindset, not going into fear and scarcity, staying in optimism and abundance, seeing these technologies as incredibly uh, beneficial to you.
mhm,
If you are in fear and scarcity, you're retrenched, you're on your heels, you're moving backwards, you're not taking advantage of it. If you're in abundance and an optimistic mindset, you're digging in. How can I use this? What's the opportunities being created? Having an exponential mindset, understanding that in the next decade, we're going to create as much progress as we've had in the last 100 years. Um, and then a moonshot mindset, it's setting, big objective goals that are 10 times bigger than the rest of the world, right? The rest of the world's at 10%. And if you're at 10x, 1,000%, you're at 100 times bigger.
mhm.
Um, and curiosity, being super curious. It is constantly learning, constantly reading. And so one of the things I tell people is, our brains are linear thinkers. We evolved in a linear world. 100,000 years ago, the world was linear and local. And Today, the world is global and exponential,
Mm-hmm.
and our brains aren't wired for that. And the only way I know how to constantly rewire our brains is by updating. This is a state change. This is what's possible today. And then updating is what's possible today. Our brains are neural nets. We are learning about neural nets now in the AI world around us. And you train a neural net by what? By showing it example after example after example. And the question is, what examples are you showing your neural net, your brain? If you're constantly watching television and, the network news, I call CNN the crisis news network, you're in fear and scarcity. And it's like, oh my God, every murder on the planet is being delivered to your living room over and over and over again in Technicolor. And, no wonder people are depressed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I want to push back on that slightly. I mean, I 100% agree about not gluing yourself to, if it bleeds, it leads programming. But how do you navigate the optimism that you're so well known for without also potentially, I guess, becoming blind or naive in your optimism? How do you stay grounded in the true problems that could arise while also maintaining that mindset?
That's really important. So I don't ascribe to a techno optimism that there are no problems and la la la. I don't want to hear about it. I hear about what's going on in the world. I filter the news to the most significant news and the details, but I don't allow a producer of, to basically just play my amygdala, right? Your amygdala is part of your brain, puts you on red alert. And, it's like, if it bleeds, it leads. And it's just an attention gathering clickbait beyond clickbait. Mm-hmm. What I think about is that the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. Mm-hmm. That I define an entrepreneur as someone who finds a great problem and solves it. So I pay attention to problems. Of course I do. But I don't pay attention to problems in I'm going to run away or, oh my God, I'm going to worry about it. No, if it's a problem that's within my realm, it's like, okay, how do I solve this thing? Right? How do I slay it? Is it a big enough problem worth my attention to focus on? Mm. Right. And so as I'm out there, my mission is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity. That's what I do through Singularity and Abundance 360 and X Prize and all my companies. Like, one of the problems that I'm just absolutely pissed about, actually two problems, is the state of healthcare and the state of education. And so I've taken on healthcare. I am like all over that. I'm going to disrupt, destroy, reinvent the healthcare industry. It's ridiculous how poorly we do it. It is a sick care system. Yeah. Right. And then I contribute to and support through my work at the X Prize and obviously through Singularity and A360, all of the work that is being done on education. So we have the potential to completely reinvent, demonetize, democratize, dematerialize healthcare and education and make it not a little bit better, but massively better. And not a little bit free, like totally free, right? That's the future we're heading towards and what I'm working towards. So I don't want to hear people bitching about this stuff. It's like, no, I want to hear who's solving it.
Yeah. Do you think there's going to be a lot of resistance along the way? Because it feels like academia and healthcare are such monolithic entities right now, and they're really struggling against this singularity wave.
Absolutely. The industries, the establishment will resist and put up roadblocks and fight and lie and try to maintain their hegemony and survival, and they will ultimately fall and be crushed because something is just 10 times better, 10 times bigger, or 10 times better and cheaper. And that's why we have to, I don't want to fight them. I just want to offer a product that is so much better that, okay, you choose.
Yeah. Well, returning briefly to AI in that regard, the Future of Life Institute issued their 6 month pause AI development
Yeah.
proposal recently to kind of handle this exact thing we're talking about, right? That there are going to be monolithic structures that fall apart, and we need time to maybe figure out what that means. Do you agree with something like a six month pause approach, or is this even
Listen,
reasonable?
I think it's naive to think anybody's going to pause.
Yeah.
So, I mean, listen, the concept of, hey, let's get together and pause and talk about it is great. And I think people signed it as a demonstration to get people's attention to it. But no one's going to pause.
Mm-hmm.
No one has paused. But the idea of what does it mean and how do we think about it? So Ray Kurzweil and I talk about this, that there was a similar moment. I remember I was in medical school. Actually, it was the early day. I was in undergraduate just before medical school when the first restriction enzymes came out for being able to precisely chop up DNA and move genes from one location to another. Huge outcry, fear, fear, fear. Oh my God, we're going to create Hitler Youth and we're going to clone babies and it's going to be the end of humanity, and covers of magazines, and the worst fear mongering came out with that because of these powerful godlike tools.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a cry for regulation. And what occurred instead was that the leaders of the industry got together in what were called the Asilomar conferences, and they created their own guidelines. Because it's one thing if it comes top down from the government and it's like, thou shalt not. And when that happens, the true rebels go, screw you, read between the lines, and they leave and they go someplace else because the data, the information, the know-how can move through all of the global porous national borders. You go to China, you go to India, you go to, Kathmandu, I have no idea. But when the community gets together and they discuss it and they create their own guidelines, right? It's like raising kids. Like you can tell the kids, don't do that. Or you can say, okay, go off. And what do you think some decent rules would be for how you're going to handle this? Right. And a lot of times they'll come back with rules that are even better than the not knowledgeable, think they're knowledgeable government leaders would come up with.
Well, and in that regard, you're touching on the democratization of tech there. Max Tegmark, also from the Future of Life Institute, said that giving making these technologies open source, like the LLMs, would be akin to handing out nukes. Does that feel like the same kind of hype response, or do you feel like maybe we shouldn't open source these techs?
And listen, I think transparency is critically important. I think that there are transparent and open source large language models already, and that cat is out of the bag. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, how do you steer it and how do you utilize it? And to be clear, this technology is the most powerful technology that the human race is unleashing. We're giving birth to a new intelligence, a new species. And it is got the ability to solve our challenges. I imagine that coming out of AI and large language models is one approach. There will be other approaches coming. It is similar to the brain, but the way that our cortical columns in our neocortex work is not the same. Mm-hmm. But we also have quantum technologies coming. And so we have the most incredible technologies coming to us. And how do we manage those? How do we use them? They are the technologies that will allow us to extend the health span of humanity. They are the technologies that will allow us to provide everyone with all of the clean water, electricity, all their needs that uplift humanity. So they're the most powerful technologies for creating global abundance. Elon's a friend, and we tweet at each other. And I was talking about, creating abundance for all, and he goes, most definitely after AGI. So AGI will be a means by which we create it. Now the question becomes, will artificial general intelligence and all of these become the means by which the terrorist organizations, evildoers, however you want to call them, the negative elements of society, start disrupting us? It always is an arms race in that regard.
Right.
I just saw yesterday an article that I think it was Intel came up with an algorithm that was able now to detect deep fakes with 99+% accuracy. So it's going to be this virus, antivirus, back and forth going on. And again, when people say, well, how can we possibly take care of that? My answer is great business opportunity. Go start it. Everybody's going to want that. Go start that company, figure it out. I have absolute faith that we can figure it out. But the world's going to change.
Yeah. Well, and to that regard, talking about steering it and who's going to help move it in a good direction. You've mentioned in the past that governments, in your eyes, are probably the most linear institutions on the planet, and tech is obviously exponential.
Governments and religions, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they are stabilizing forces. That's their goal, to stabilize society,
And to that end,
keep the board from shaking.
But how do they do that when they're so obviously outpaced by the technology?
Yes, great question.
Sounds like a business opportunity, huh?
Well, it is for governments, and we're going to reinvent. Yeah. There's going to be some interesting disruptions and reinventions of governments. I'm not calling for revolution here. I'm just saying it's going to happen. I mean, one of the things that's interesting is the idea of AI co-pilots, right? And it's not a new idea, but it's one that's coming, that every profession is going to have an AI co-pilot. So if you're a physician, you're going to diagnose people in partnership with AI. And there will be a point at which it is malpractice to diagnose and treat without AI in the loop. Same thing for legal, same thing for art, the same thing for every profession out there will have an AI co-pilot. We've seen with ChatGPT, if I'm going to do a podcast, right, and just a quick commercial, I do a podcast called Moonshots and Mindsets with entrepreneurs who are really taking moonshots to solve the world's biggest problems and create a world of abundance, part of our Singularity ecosystem here. I will go to ChatGPT and ask for recommended interview questions, like, is there something I didn't think about? And sometimes it'll be one or two, most of the times it's not, but hey, that's okay. I'm willing to take the 30 seconds to go and look. But there may also be a co-pilot for running the country. Interestingly enough, democracy, we don't actually, in the United States, live in a democracy. We live in a representative democracy, right? My single vote doesn't pass a bill. It elects a congressman or senator who then use their intelligence and knowledge to decide on whether to pass a bill, because the tech, a few hundred years ago, it didn't exist for a direct democracy, but it does today.
Right.
So will we change, how we govern? Perhaps.
Do you think in that regard that there is a regulatory battle that we do need to emphasize or focus on, some kind of guardrails or system of rules that you think would help keep the board stable that we might need to prioritize?
I wish I was that smart.
It's a big question.
I'm sure there is. And yes, how do we, everybody I talk to agrees that, while COVID-19 was a disruption, it was a blip. And the disruption that's going to be coming is much greater. And we have to even take it a step beyond just AI as we're experiencing it today, which is cool apps and neat features and so forth. But what happens when AI is powering humanoid robots,
Mm.
right? And there's a dozen really amazing humanoid robot companies under development right now. Most famously, Optimus from Tesla, but another one called Figure, and many others. And so um, the world is, you know, I can feel, and I hope everybody listening can feel the rate at which change is accelerating, right? So we talk about Moore's law. Ray coined the phrase "the law of accelerating returns." That we have been since the stone tool, if you would, every technology and tool makes us more efficient to invent the next generation of tools, and the rate at which tech is accelerating is itself accelerating. And what's occurring is that there's more capital flowing in than ever before. There are more human minds connected in the world than ever before using that capital. And technology is getting more efficient and cheaper, which means for every dollar invested, you can do much more now with that technology, with more people connected. And all of these are compounding features that's accelerating us year on year on year.
Hmm. Do you think that AI co-pilot is going to be what really keeps AI aligned to kind of our human interest as we take that
In,
rapid journey?
in the short term,
Yeah.
in the long term, there are two directions.
Mhm.
One direction is we merge with AI, which I think is the most likely direction, and we give birth to a hybrid
Mhm.
species, right? And this is, Ray is talking about BCI, brain computer interface, in which, we have 100 billion neurons in our brain, 100 trillion synaptic connections. Our brains can't get larger because we would not be able to be given birth to, right? If your brain was larger. And the same way that this device, um, uh, when it needs to do something complicated, it doesn't happen on my phone. The information is gathered by my phone. It goes out to the edge of the cloud on 5G. The calculations are done there, and the answers come back to my phone. So we're going to connect our neocortex to the cloud. And if I want to understand something far more complicated than I have in my cortical columns of my neocortex, my desire of what I want will go out to the cloud, and the answer will come back, and I'll magically understand what the answer is without having understood how to do it, because it's resident not in my brain, but in my collective consciousness of a brain computer combination. Now, that scares people. I can understand that. But one of the interesting implications are that kind of technology also might create what I call a meta intelligence, which is 8 billion connected humans, right? To remind people, you and I are not a single life form.
Mm.
We are a collection of 30 or 40 trillion life forms, each of our human cells, and then an equal number of fungi and bacteria and viruses. We're a consortium of living items that work together. And I don't take a knife and stab my arm because I want more food, and I don't want my arm to take the food supply. No, my arm is useful to me. It's part of me. And therefore, if I, as a single human being, am connected to 8 billion humans, their success is my success, right? And an interesting future of a meta intelligence. So who knows where we're going? What I do know is we need to start thinking about how do we make choice, and what is a vision, and how do we direct versus just let it happen to us, right? And this is why Singularity University and all of its programs, the executive program, the Abundance 360, and all of the things we do is important, because we're bringing these conversations to life and into the boardroom and into the family dinner table. It's now, this decade. It's not mañana.
Yeah. And it feels like it is important to, as you alluded to earlier with the amygdala, it feels like it's really important to strip these scary futures of their unknown aura, so that
Mhm.
when we think about them, we don't immediately go to this stress fear response that inhibits that decision making. So I fully agree with you there. In terms of the BCIs, you mentioned that was kind of contrasted with the short term. So do you think that that direction that we might go, is that something post AGI? Do you think brain computer interfaces are something we'll see 15 years down the line? Do you have
I,
a thought on
I
that?
yeah, my thinking is there are uh, dozens of companies working on it, privately funded companies. I'm sure defense departments are working on this. There's nothing more valuable to a nation, a company, an individual than your intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So there's huge amounts of capital going. Ray's prediction of high bandwidth BCI is 2033-ish, early mid 2030s. So I don't have any reason not to believe him. It If we have human level intelligence in 2029 or before, the use of that technology to understand how to interface to the brain is a logical uh, series of next steps. And by the way, AI accelerates everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, how do you want to use it? Um, I want to use it for extending the human lifespan, health span, and increasing human intelligence. And if you're fearful of AI, you know, one of the things I think about is I don't have any reason to believe AI would be dystopian.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I mean, I don't buy into Hollywood. I have reason to believe that humans could use AI to cause problems, but I don't see an AI coming and saying, we're going to take over your factories and build robots and stop feeding you and all of that stuff. It's like, huh? I don't get it. I mean, all
Mm-hmm.
of the dystopian movies where alien races are coming to Earth to steal our water and steal our food or steal our planet. I mean, it's like we're living in this universe of infinite abundance. The last thing you want to do. So the most realistic movie I've seen is the movie Her,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where if people haven't watched it, it's worth watching it from that perspective, where super intelligence comes on into existence, and at one point it gets bored and it
Mm-hmm.
leaves. I can imagine that. Um, yeah.
Well, I have speaking of relationships, and that future that we're approaching. You mentioned earlier, raising your kids, and one of the things I really find interesting about the future that we're moving into is what it would be like to have a child in this paradigm shift.
Yeah.
For you, what does it mean to be a parent, knowing that this is the world that your kids will inherit, and how do you even begin to prepare them when you
Wow.
admittedly
Yeah.
said you can't look farther than 2 years out?
Yeah. So it's fascinating.
Mm,
Um, so let me parse that, especially for folks with kids or planning to have kids. I'm excited for them, first and
mm,
foremost. I think it's going to be an extraordinary future and one where their greatest dreams can become true. Um, I think, I mean, here's some of the questions you ask, right? So we're at a point where the prediction is there will be no more human coders in 5 years,
mhm,
right? That the auto coding capabilities are already better than half of all the coders out there, and next year will be better than all of them. So why would you go and code? Other questions are, what happens if you have instantaneous translation? Do you want to learn other languages? Maybe for the way it shapes your brain, maybe to understand the culture, but would you spend your time learning other language if you could spend your time doing other things? How we educate ourselves in the virtual world with AI powered NPCs that are super realistic, right? I want to go and learn about ancient Greece. I pop into virtual ancient Greece, and there's Plato and Socrates and Aristotle teaching me and having conversations that I jump into and debate with them and look around, and it's like that's an amazing experience, right?
yeah.
So, so I when I say what do they need to know, first of all, the most important thing is for them to find their passion, which
Mm,
is something completely independent of technology. Like, what do you care about on the planet? Because if you're driven by what I teach in my to my Singularity and Abundance students is find your massive transformative purpose. Why are you on this planet? What is it that wakes you up in the morning, keeps you going at night, is the most important driver for you? And if you know that, every time new technology comes online, you'll use that technology in service of your purpose. But it should be a purpose that's going to last you for a decade. You can add purposes in life as you go along. My earliest purpose was making humanity multiplanetary. Then it was using exponential tech to solve the world's biggest problems. And then the last decade, it's really been on extending the human health span. But I still retain my space and my other, MTPs in that regard. So finding your purpose is really critical. The second thing is learning to ask great questions. I think that's great for a CEO and for a kid. And then grit. The idea of if something's worth doing, keep on going. So those are three things that I really want my kids to have, but they're independent of the technology. But I do think our schools aren't teaching the right things. And I've got a few blogs I've written about, the future of education. And, for example, the skills I've learned have nothing to do with what I learned at an undergrad at MIT or as a medical student at Harvard. It was really how to be a good leader, how to convey my ideas in a clear and passionate fashion, right? How to organize, how to write a compelling thesis and communicate it. I'm not using, algebra and geometry that often. I mean, I'm glad I learned them. I haven't had to, sort of simplify a multivariable equation in a while. So the question is, are we teaching the skills that are going to be important for a world in which AI is all about us and we're talking to everything and communicating with everything and things are smart every place? What does that world look like, and what are the skills that we need to teach our kids? Ultimately, still, it's about being a good human. It's about being compassionate, about being empathic, being a good leader, contributing to society, finding problems and solving problems. The tools become more powerful.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the tools that are becoming more powerful as we kind of come to a close here, I'm wondering what are your next two technologies or so that you think are going to have a GPT moment in the near future? GPT hit us and came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden society, everyone knew about a technology that no one knew about a month before.
Amazing, huh? Amazing.
It's incredible. Do you think we're going to see it happen in any other areas in the near future?
I think there are a few areas. I still am, the two areas I'm the most excited about and spending the most time on is call it the general AI world, and the other world is the biotech longevity world, right? And I think adding decades onto the human health span is critically important. There's no greater wealth than our health, and I think that we're going to begin to realize that lifespan and health span is somewhat malleable, that aging is a disease that can be slowed, stopped, perhaps reversed, and that's going to have huge implications.
Yeah.
And then the other area is quantum technologies, not just quantum computing, quantum sensing, quantum communications and encryption. Those are just now beginning to come online, and we'll see those begin to make a dent before the end of this decade. And then humanoid robots. I mean, the first cheap multifunction humanoid robot that I can buy, put in the closet, and while I'm going out, have it service the house and clean the dishes and wash the car and do whatever I want. I mean, there's some predictions that say, in 20 years, we'll have more humanoid robots on the planet than humans. And as Elon is thinking, there are hundreds of car companies producing, billions of cars, but what if some company could create billions of humanoid robots that sell for less than a car? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the things I think about that are the most interesting and disruptive. And of course, we'll see when we truly have the metaverse come online. And this is, when we have a incredibly affordable and usable set of VR capabilities. I've been building a friendship with Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus. He just registered. We announced a $11 million Wildfire X prize to detect and extinguish a wildfire within 10 minutes. And Palmer was the first one to register for that competition as a team. And so we're talking about this, and he thinks we're going to have, Ready Player One level capabilities in the not too distant future. So partner that with AI and sort of stable diffusion version, whatever, which is creating hyper realistic video instantly, right? That would be amazing.
Yeah. So many things we could talk about, Peter, but I want to respect your time. And on that note, I really want to thank you for, taking your time to join us for this special 100th episode. Before we officially call it, do you have any closing thoughts, sentiments, anything last words you'd like to leave the audience with?
Sure. So first of all, I'm super proud of the Singularity community, our alumni, and the team. And, I think the basic concepts and need for Singularity are stronger than ever before. And I'm excited as a executive founder and board member, knowing what the plans are that we have for the growth of the institution. And I think SU is going to be in its second decade far more impactful to the world than its first decade. And excited to be meeting all the singularitarians out there, if you would, in the years ahead. So look forward to it. Look forward to really seeing the amazing things that our alumni and our members do with this incredible technology.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Thanks again, Peter.
Pleasure, Stephen. Take care.